Hello everyone, Mr. Steckler here. So, quick guideline on how to peer review using the 8 guidelines. So first off, I want to thank Dominic Norfleet for his document. I used his in my peer review over here. So I'm going to go through all 8 of the guidelines and I'm going to show you real examples on how you can do these things. So first up, guideline number 1, before you even make your first comment to your partner, read the document or question all the way through. So make sure that you don't start writing until you've fully read their answer, whether that's the answer to one question or that's the answer to the entire document. So, for example, if I was reading over his definition of the word algorithm over here, then I would make sure that I am only going to give him feedback in a different color, in this case maybe red, if I've read everything. So after reading what's written over here for the definition, I also want to make sure I read what's over here for proof of understanding. Once I've read both, I can give him some feedback. So in this case, I don't think I need to give him any feedback, so I'm going to move on. So the second thing that you guys are going to be doing when peer reviewing is point out not just strengths, but also the weaknesses of the document, this little note right over here. So in order to point out the strengths and the weaknesses, I over here for number 2 wrote that you gave really specific details for your proof of understanding. I just mentioned before in number 1 that for his algorithm he gave really good details. In fact, I've read through all of them. I've read through this one and this one and this. I read through all of them, and he's done a really nice job in his proof of understanding. I don't have anything that I think I can add to it, so I gave him a compliment on the side over here. So make sure you include detailed compliments in documents if what they did was in fact something that was good. So after the number 2, the next one that you guys are going to be doing is number 3. Offer suggestions, not commands. So over number 3 over here, I've written that I suggest you put Windows plus Shift plus S. So right here he has a minus sign instead of the plus sign, so I'm thinking maybe it would be helpful to put the plus sign instead. And also I want him to include a verbal explanation so that he holds all keys down at once. So maybe he can also write over here something along the lines of that you can have a verbal explanation of what he needs. So I can include something over here such as he needs a verbal explanation for him to do everything for the shortcut. So you can leave yourself or leave your partner, your clock partner, your comments on how to give suggestions. I didn't tell him you must change it. I gave him a suggestion to do it. So it's important because you don't want your partner to feel like they have to do it. You're just giving them something that could be helpful. So number 3, offer suggestions, not commands. So number 4, up here, tells us that they should be very genuine. Comments should be appropriate and constructive. There's no need to be rude. So for question or review number 4, what I wrote that I noticed that all the pseudocode is green down below. So if you follow this arrow down, I'm pointing to the fact that the pseudocode is all green down here, this stuff over here. So knowing that this is all green, I asked him, why do you think that is? Include that in his answer. So it might be helpful for him to include in his answer for number 7 over here that the reason it's green is. So not necessarily saying he has to do it, but I'm giving him a suggestion that could be helpful to him, and I'm also making sure that it is not rude. It's very it's very easygoing in saying, I noticed. It's not saying you did this wrong. All I said was the word noticed. I noticed. It's a really nice way to give someone feedback, just saying what you noticed as opposed to telling them what to do. So that's number 5. Number 4. Number 5, on the other hand, is telling you guys that you should make sure comments are clear and text specific so that your peer will know what you're referring to. So, for example, over here, on step number 5, am talking about step number 2 in his algorithm. So step number 2, I drew an arrow over 2. So this step over here is saying, squeeze the bottle over your toothbrush. So I've mentioned where over the toothbrush, the bristles, the handle. It would be kind of silly to put the toothpaste on the handle of the brush, and to insert this picture on the iPad, if you are peer reviewing on the iPad, something that you can do that's really neat about the iPad is you can swipe up to go to another app, and you can open that other app by dragging that onto the screen and letting go, and you can drag it down to insert it as part of your screen. And what you can do is you simply hold your finger down and push down to highlight something, and then just drag it into your documents. So one powerful thing about using the iPad to give feedback is it's really easy to insert pictures into your comments, and then it was so easy for me to just draw an arrow to where I was talking about. So it's really easy for the person who is being reviewed to understand where I was talking about. So for the moment, I'm going to have that go away, and we're back to the document. So that's number 5. Make sure that you are being very specific. I'm specifically stating in step number 2, so you have to make sure that you talk about specifically where you're talking about. So next up is number 6 over here. So step number 6 in peer reviewing is make sure you ask a good question. Don't just say good job, you want to give them more detail. So my question I'm giving them here is, do the lines of code stay on the same line as the pseudocode? So I've highlighted over here question number 3, or step number 3, and I showed him the whole line to try and help him see that everything is on the same line, line number 3. So line number 3 says, for the pseudocode, when sensor is on, turn on and stay on. And that command in pseudocode is given with the if parentheses, sensor value parentheses, touch start parentheses, equals 1 end parentheses. So that line right there is being explained with the pseudocode over to the right. And we're also noticing that when we write pseudocode, it is on the same line as the code. So by asking this question, I might help him understand something about the question, but I'm not specifically giving him a command. I'm just asking a good question that I noticed that might help him, as opposed to just telling them what to do. So asking good questions, super important. Then lastly, or almost lastly, step number 7 says reread your comments on your document. Here it said post-it note, but really it's on the document before passing them on. Make sure that what you wrote was spelled correctly, that made sense, and that you're not just passing on something that you're not proud of. And then lastly, step 8, avoid turning your peer's paper into your paper. Just don't do it. Help them, but you should not be changing it. So we've completed all 8 of the steps in this document. We talked about how to be a good peer reviewer. And this document over here, which I again thank you, Dominic, for letting me use your document, I kind of showed you the power of using the iPad to annotate and to give feedback. So this could be a peer review that I do for a partner, or you do for your partner one day when we fully are ready for taking notes. But this is just a quick example of the 8 different strategies for how to peer review. Thanks, everyone. See you later.